Hello, good morning and welcome to today's loveAudio How Switzerland Listens session. And welcome from your office, kitchen, bed or sofa, wherever we find you today in our new normal. My name is Joe Grimsdale. I lead Spotify ad sales across the Swiss market with our exclusive sales partner, Goldbach, who I'm delighted to be presenting with today, alongside Amanda Hoyle, my colleague from the Spotify Creative Strategy team. Now, a little bit of technical housekeeping to start off with. All audio and video will be switched off in today's session. You will just hear from myself and the other speakers on today's call. The session will be recorded if you wish to check back in at a later stage or hopefully pass on to a colleague or industry friend. Second point, please have your mobile phone to hand, as there are a couple of engagement exercises that will need your mobile in the session. And if you can and you have the ability to do so, please listen with your headphones in today's session for the best audio experience possible. Third, you will see a small Q&A button at the bottom here. Please feel free to add in any questions you have throughout today's session. The presentation is scheduled to last around 45 minutes and we'll have 15 minutes at the end to answer any questions that have been coming through. And then finally, I'm sure we've all faced and had a number of Zooms or Google Hangout calls over the last couple of months, so interaction is a must in these sessions. We want this session to be as dynamic as possible, so as mentioned, please do pop any questions into the section at the bottom. But also we want to hear from you guys on the call through some interactive polls that we'll be getting up. So to kick off today's session, we've prepared a couple of polls. So let's kick off with the first poll. So in what way has your streaming behavior on Spotify changed during the current working from home reality? I'm sure we're all facing a new normal and we're listening and consuming music in different ways than before. So yeah, we'll give it a couple of minutes. I can see the votes are coming through as we speak. I'll give it just a couple more seconds. There's a few more people left to answer. Great. I can see the final few votes are just popping through. Cool, so if we can now pull up the results through the miracle of technology, we can see that, streaming behavior is changing, but also it's adapting to the way that people are listening. So you can see here, over half of our listeners on the call today have said it's business as usual, but a lot are streaming more at home. And that's very reflective of how we at Spotify are seeing everybody's new normal. And over the past few months, our industry has seen unprecedented change. On the platform side, we are seeing brands act quickly and question their business as usual marketing plans. And rightfully so. Business is definitely not usual at the moment, and it's unclear when or if it will ever return to the ways in which we perceive normal. So in today's session, we hope to spread a little bit of optimism. loveAudio, How Switzerland Listens, is a bespoke session for the Swiss market from our global loveAudio series. loveAudio is an event series designed to inspire agencies and brands through the power of audio and demonstrate how Spotify can address business challenges with unique media solutions. So let's jump into the agenda for today. So we're going to cover 5 main topics in today's session. First of all, we're going to look at the audio opportunity here in the Swiss market to show you how audio can be an impactful media for your advertising strategy across the market. We're then going to show you some insight into how users across the Swiss market listen, and importantly, where Spotify can add incremental reach to your current activations across the country. With our guest speaker, Amanda Hoyle, we will also provide some audio inspiration and next practices showing how Spotify have used our data insights to fuel bespoke campaigns for some of the biggest and best loved brands in the Swiss market. We then hope to give you some actionable, practical tips before you hit record, from the fun to the functional, to create the best audio creative for Spotify. And then, as mentioned, we hope that there's plenty of Q&A questions jumping through, and we can come to that at the end in the Q&A section. Now, we asked you to have your phones at the ready because we want to find out what your music taste says about you. So if you could all get your phones ready and scan the small QR code here. So open up your camera, scan the QR code, and it should take you through to a separate website. Which will then, you can fill out some data on the form, and we can see exactly how you guys are listening and give you some interesting insights based on that. So I'm just going to give it a few minutes now whilst we have the user numbers jumping in. So bear with me for a minute or so whilst we get everyone logged on. See a few people are jumping on, which is good to see. Hope nobody's too embarrassed to share their listening insights, but the data we're going to show really presents how people listen, shows some top artists and some top genres of you, the users on this call. And the reason we're showing this is that we want to demonstrate the power of data behind Spotify by giving you a real life insight into what you on the call listen to, which can then be used to spark your interest in what you as brand marketers can do to reach your target audience on Spotify. So I see that the user numbers are jumping in, so I think we can jump into the data now. So if we look at the people on the call, some very popular, well-known artists are clearly at the top. So pop, rap, hip hop continue to be the favorite genres, and the artists here definitely reflect that. I myself am not a particular fan of Taylor Swift, but you know, that's music. It's bespoke for everybody and really allows people to connect with content that matters to them. We can then see some of the biggest tracks. So there's a few Lady Gaga fans on the call, but also some local content as well from artists that are clearly popular in the Swiss market, which is great to see. It's not all about the biggest and best loved global artists. It's also on Spotify about what the local content can do for you to help you reach the audience you need to target. Finally, as we see in many of the markets, pop, rap, hip hop become the biggest genres across the market. But within that, there's lots of different artists that people listen to. So pop as a genre is big, but also there's lots of local artists in there too that users in the Swiss market listen to. And finally, which is my favorite part of the presentation, is to show some sort of core insights around the playlists. So there's 6 topics here. So unfortunately, it looks like the images aren't coming up, but we can jump through and I can explain exactly what they mean. So the top left, 58 playlists. Oh, just bear with us a second, guys. Here we go. Great, thank you. So yeah, you can see at the top, 58 playlists is the average number of playlists that people on this call have in their Spotify account. So this clearly demonstrates that people want to create a bespoke listening experience for themselves. It's great to see that the Swiss market are also happy people. So the genre of happy, upbeat music is very popular for the audience. Danceability, again, users in the Swiss market like to get down and like to boogie, which is great to see, with 67% danceability in your music listening. Now, my favorite point, the 21% politically incorrect. This shows that people on this call listen to songs with explicit lyrics. Now, that's my genre as well. Now, I listen to a lot of explicit content myself, so it's great to see that there are also some equally politically incorrect according to Spotify listening on this call. Then we see mainstreamers, so the hipster type vibe that goes across the Swiss market is very prevalent in the listening behavior of people on this call today, with 49% listening to mainstream music and the rest listening to non-mainstream music. So a few little fun examples there of what data at Spotify can really show and how we can use that to fuel your campaigns to target the right person with the right message at the right time. So let's now dive into the audio opportunity here in Switzerland. And let's have a look at what this looks like. So we want to show you how audio on Spotify Switzerland can help you as brand marketers reach the right person at the right time with the right message. Now at Spotify, we are seeing more users and more streaming behavior on our platform than ever before. In fact, we have seen that our user base here in Switzerland has grown by 46% in the last 2 years, showing how audio continues to be a key pillar of our daily lives. But what does that mean in terms of user numbers here in Switzerland? Well, we know a big question we get asked regularly is, how many users do we have in the local market? Well, we're delighted to now report that we can share this number. So you can see from the data here that we now have 1.9 million monthly active users here in the Swiss market, with 50% of those being on the free tier. Now, we often get asked the difference between the free and the premium and how that the premium users are the only users that have money and they're the only users that should be targeted. Well, that's definitely not the case. Free and premium is purely based on the user's listening behavior. Now, a user who listens to the free tier chooses to do so because it fits their lifestyle and the way they want to listen to Spotify. They're still a very targetable, actionable audience that you as brand marketers can reach with your message. Now, we mentioned that this number here is rapidly increasing year on year in Switzerland, but what is driving this aggressive growth? Well, in general, we see the audio experience as an escape. It's a way to unplug from our hyper turned on screen driven world as people focus more on family time, time for self-care away from their screens, or daily routines like cooking, working out, or catching up with friends. Audio enhances these moments and it can go with you anywhere at any time. In fact, in a recent global Spotify trend survey, we saw that screen exhaustion is real. In fact, 56% of people feel that audio is a welcome escape from too much screen time. Now, this is consistent with what we at Spotify call screenless moments. Now, these are the times when visual media is not reaching your target audience. At that same time, they are extra attentive to what they're listening to. Now, unlike other medium, audio adds more to what you're doing. It allows you to be present and stay connected to the world around you whilst making that moment even richer. Now, in terms of engagement, we're going to bring up the second poll for today, which is going to ask you, what does audio offer you when you are streaming? So if you think about your streaming behavior on Spotify, what does it give you and why do you choose to listen to Spotify in that particular mood or moment? So seeing that the results are coming through, which is great. Just give it 10 more seconds while the final answers come through. Great, so if we could pull up the results, I think we'll see, yes, and as always, you know, listening and audio on Spotify offers a personalized experience that no other medium really can offer. So I mentioned just a second ago about how audio enhances your moment, whether you're running, catching up with friends, cooking, whatever it is, audio creates that personalized experience, and the content behind it on Spotify makes that moment even richer. Now, we mentioned how streaming and user behavior continues to grow in the Swiss market, and a big part of this is connected devices. Our strategy at Spotify is a strategy of ubiquity. Now, ubiquity means to be present at anywhere, at any time. Now, we at Spotify strive to have our content available to anybody, anywhere, at any time. And a big part of that rise has been connected devices. We are now available on more than 300 different smart devices, from TVs to refrigerators, smart speakers, and in your car. Now, if you think about this particular user here, he's gaming, what other medium is reaching him at that particular time? I would suggest none at all. When he's concentrating on scoring the goal on FIFA or trying to avoid the gulag in Call of Duty, he's fully immersed in that experience. However, when he's listening to audio on Spotify as part of his gaming experience, audio is the only commercial message that can reach that user at that time. Now, we see that users on Spotify here in Switzerland spend around 2.5 hours per day on our platform. And it's all these various devices that allow users to stay connected to our platform and stream audio at any time, anywhere. Now, music, of course, is just as important as it ever has been right now. Top artists are still releasing new music, and our users continue to turn to Spotify to not only discover new music, but as I mentioned, to soundtrack their daily lives. Millions of people around the world are still streaming their favorite tracks, artists, and genres. However, recent changes in how we work and live have shifted how and what people are streaming. So let's take a look at some of these recent trends. Now, I'm sure many of you will have experienced the global lockdown that we all did between mid-April and mid-May. So during the height of the global lockdown, we saw some very interesting user behavior. So people were using audio to soundtrack their time spent at home. So you can see here, users on Spotify turn to us to soundtrack their home schooling moment. So for any parents on the call, I think you can all agree that your home has now turned into a classroom, canteen, playground, and anything in between. Users on Spotify Switzerland have turned to us to soundtrack that moment and probably make that homeschooling moment a little bit more bearable. I'm sure we've all had a go at cooking up a storm in the kitchen as well during lockdown. I myself have had a few kitchen disasters when trying to perfect my triple chocolate cooked cookies. A bad cookie is always a good cookie in my mind, but still, we finally got there and we made the perfect recipe. Now I, as I'm sure many of the users have done, have turned to Spotify to soundtrack that moment. In fact, we saw that baking playlists increased by over 120% during that peak lockdown period. And as I mentioned at the very beginning, I'm sure some of you are joining us from the office, your sofa, maybe even your bed. It's a very strange and weird world that we're operating in at the moment. We're all juggling home and work life in the same environment. And again, users are turning to Spotify to soundtrack this moment. We see that home working playlists have increased by over 1,400%. And I'm sure a few of you will recognize some of the songs listed on the side here. So we hope that we've demonstrated in this introductory session is that audio acts as a companion. It enhances a user's moment throughout the day. Unlike other media, audio adds more to whatever the user is doing. It also allows the user to be present and stay connected with the world around them, whilst making that particular moment even richer. Whether you're cooking up a storm in the kitchen, putting together a big client presentation, or spending time with your family, audio is the thread that helps brands connect with their audience in these screenless moments. So it's now my pleasure to hand over to Martin Baumgartner from Swiss Radio World to run you through exactly how the Swiss market listens. Martin, are you there?
Hey Joe, so I am. A very warm welcome from my side and a brief introduction for those who don't know me yet. My name is Martin Baumgartner. I'm responsible for R&D at Swiss Radio World, a branch of the Goldbach Group. In this role, I'm also involved in a few research projects, so I hope we can provide you some relevant answers concerning Spotify's role in the Swiss listener, but also in the advertising market. So what are the main points we want to focus in the upcoming minutes? I'd like to give you a feeling about how important Spotify is today in Switzerland, how Spotify can grow the reach of your radio campaign, and what is the incremental reach of Spotify compared to other digital platforms. Now, before we start, I'd like to give you a short insights about how our numbers were pulled. GWI conducted a panel-based survey in Switzerland between Q2 2019 and Q1 2020, and we were mainly focusing on people from the German and French-speaking part of Switzerland, and we were asking about 4,000 people about their listening behavior. So, what do we want to show? If we look at the listener in Switzerland, we see the free users. We have a reach of Spotify over all age groups of 17.2%. Of course, Spotify attracts mainly the youngsters, but also we see a steady growth of Spotify's footprints with the silver surfers and in the middle tier as well. Now, based on these numbers, some of us might anticipate that the lines between radio and audio blur more and more. So what is the incremental reach that Spotify can provide if we have a radio campaign? Therefore, in the upcoming slide, we assume that we address a radio audience during 1 week with a campaign and add Spotify to extend presence over 4 weeks to grow overall reach, but also to create an additional touch point where the audience is in a different mindset. What you see here is the unique reach of radio, Spotify, and the overlapping audiences. Spotify creates incremental reach over all age groups, resulting in an average increase of 9.6%. Of course, this data does not reflect a detailed campaign, which would be carefully planned if you are getting in touch with us, but it is thought to give you an impression of what incremental reach can be achieved and how additional budget might be used with the same creative asset. So how does Spotify compare to radio, age, and gender? Obviously, Spotify has its strength in younger age groups and represents a ratio male-female that is slightly leaning towards males. But given the possibilities to target your digital audience, you might consider the use of Spotify to reinforce your campaign's impact in your respective target group. So now let's move on from radio to other digital media. Obviously, how does Spotify compare to other music streaming services? Spotify is the undisputed #1 if we include all audio platforms, even those who are not advertising based. But if we skip the ones which are not offering advertising, we see something. I'd like to go back. We see that Spotify has an even stronger position compared to SoundCloud, Deezer, Audible, or Musify. So as soon as it comes to advertising an audio platform, Spotify is your #1 address to go. And how does Spotify compare to other platforms in the digital area, in the digital world? It might not surprise any one of us that Google and Facebook are topping these charts, but as Spotify provides a different experience and all digital platforms are leveraging the opportunity to target the audiences, audio is becoming another player to consider in your strategic planning, especially if you want to leverage screenless situations. Don't be fooled by the sometimes small incremental reach. Since no one will book a campaign that covers YouTube's overall reach, let us know how we can support your efforts to create a cross-platform campaign with data from our survey. If you're looking at the incremental reach that Spotify creates on platforms such as Snapchat, Twitter, or TikTok, you might want to consider Spotify as an additional touch point on incremental element for incremental reach for your campaign. Now, before I hand over to Amanda Hoyle, I'd like to summarize the main pillars of these numbers. Spotify has grown substantially over the last years and therefore should be considered to boost your radio or digital campaigns, not only to grow reach, but also to create an additional touch point without suffering from screen exhaustion. And to finalize, I just want to give you these three numbers. Spotify users are 56% more likely to buy products they see advertised compared to the general population. 18% are more likely to tell their friends and family about new products. And we have a lot of eco-friendly, socially responsible, and also listeners which are listening to consumer feedback if they consider something to be bought. Now I'd like to hand over to Amanda Hoyle, who will give you some insights on creative solutions.
Perfect. Thanks, Martin. Hello, everyone. So as you will have heard, my name is Amanda Hoyle, and I work on our creative solutions team. So essentially, my team at Spotify helps drive creativity, and we often help work on a lot of the bigger projects that you don't often see with the standard media buy, but it kind of goes beyond that. And so what I want to talk to you about today is all around audio-filled creativity. So with audio-filled creativity, what we're meaning is, okay, how can we really fuel your creative? How can we ensure that we're really making this come to life through the form of audio? So now going into kind of what our next realm of topics today will be specifically around the creative potential of audio. Oops, sorry, got a little ahead of myself there. So the creative potential of audio. So as I mentioned, this is booming like never before. And albeit we're a little bit biased at Spotify, we truly believe this. And we really believe that there's a huge potential here for brands to tap into this as well. So when you're kind of combining our data and insights alongside the amount of users that we have, which is increasingly growing, we see there's this huge opportunity to get super creative within the audio space. So before we continue on to the next slide, I'd like to do another poll and get a bit more interactive here, just to understand what your level of familiarity is with audio creative in general. So hopefully you can now see the poll. So basically the question is, how familiar are you with using audio for advertising? So this can range from anywhere from very familiar to a bit of middle ground to I'm totally new to this. And I can see we're already getting some responses here, and it kind of looks like everyone is across the board. So I'll give you a few more seconds just to make sure that everyone gets the chance to vote. And no matter where you are on this spectrum, hopefully my session here and the session in general today will help talk to each of you guys depending on where you are in your audio journey. So I'll give you 5 more seconds and then we'll move on. Okay, perfect. So yeah, it looks like the results are pretty even across the board, ranging from 10 all the way to 12. So we've got really kind of different levels of expertise here, which is actually amazing. So next I'll talk to you essentially about what we call as our next practices. So I think if you guys are familiar with audio or less familiar, you will have still heard a lot of publishers and media partners out there talk about best practices. So often a brand will come to you or a platform will come to you and say, this is the best way to create on our platform. At Spotify, we actually take a different approach, and this is all around, okay, what are the next practices? So how can we keep innovating? How can we keep pushing the boundaries? And how can we really kind of find the next best thing? We often laugh about this, but we say if we'd already done the best, we'd probably all be out of jobs. So this is really about pushing the envelope, pushing this a bit further and seeing what we can do within audio while also pairing it with our streaming intelligence. So to walk you through essentially our first next practice, this is all around disrupt, don't interrupt. So what I mean by this is it's really interesting when brands are able to actually capture a user's attention. So that's the disruption part. But the interruption part is what we don't want to see. So interruption is where you basically take away from the moment that they're in or take away from their listening experience. And it is a fine balance, but we often see a lot of brands on Spotify doing this really, really well when they pair it with our streaming insights, so they can get super contextual, reaching users in the right moments. And the example I want to take you through here is one that we used for Audi for in-car targeting. So I'll play that for you now.
Der neue
Oops, sorry about that. I think I did a double click there. Okay, it's just building the suspense. So now you'll get it.
Der neue Audi A6 schenkt Ihnen mehr Zeit für die wichtigen Dinge im Leben. Lange Werbespots gehören nicht dazu. Der neue Audi A6. Zeit für Sie. Jetzt bei Ihrem Audi-Händler.
So we saw this work really nicely because of the fact that it was reaching users and listeners when they were in the mindset of thinking about their vehicles, thinking about cars. And so it was a really nice way to use this disrupt, don't interrupt message. Moving on now to our next practice that I'll walk you through today. This is all around optimizing for sound up. So I'm sure lots of people have heard optimize for sound off. We do not believe that at Spotify. And so we have 85% of our listeners using headphones. And so this means that you really, really have their ears. And so you can really grab their attention and get your brand message across when you optimize for using sound. So Swiss Tech here optimize for sound on by basically speaking to their Gen Z audience through a fun and contextual audio spot.
Lass zu. Wir haben eine Lehrstelle und du füllst sie aus. Du brauchst eine Lehrstelle, wir geben deine aus. Du willst eine Lehre haben, wir wollen dir eine Lehre sein. Anrufen, anschauen, abmachen, merci. Wir, die Gebäudetechniker, suchen 2000 Lehrlinge. Informier dich jetzt auf toplehrstellen.ch.
And what I'll say about that one that I personally love is they actually brought in a beat so you could feel it. And as a listener, when you're actually in a streaming moment, if you're listening to music, that's such a nice way to kind of fit the moment that they're in, really optimize for sound up, but also have some fun with it. So the next practice that I'll take you through, and this is a bit of a mouthful, I always want to say next practice, but is all around giving your eyes a break. So I'm going to pull up another poll here, but this is essentially all about how familiar is the audience that we have today with innovative audio formats. And so I'd love for you guys to go through the different formats. So 3D audio, ASMR, dynamic audio, have some of you guys actually done all of these formats or none of these formats? And I'll give you a few more seconds, but it looks like we're trending towards not yet, which is actually great because I think that when we're starting off, it's quite easy to actually start with the audio, just audio in general. And then as you're building on your level of expertise, as you're building on the creative potential, that's where we can bring in some of these immersive formats and really, really stand out. So I think we'll end the poll now. It looks like we have most of you. And as I mentioned, it's most of you actually haven't tried this yet. So a nice example I want to take you through here is one with SRF. So this was actually created to drive to a podcast. But basically what we did here was work with SRF to create a 3D audio spot. So 3D audio, imagine if you're listening with your headphones on, it basically surrounds your whole head so that it's a super immersive audio experience. And so we also work with Pablito to ensure that we were kind of tapping into the brand ambassador here and speaking to the audience. But I'll play the spot for you now and we can discuss it a little bit afterwards. Just a quick mention as well is that we'll be sending these audio files to you after the session today. So don't worry if you don't have your headphones, that is the best way to listen to it, but we'll pass them along so you can actually enjoy them in their full capacity after this as well.
Du hast immer für dich behalten, dass du nach dem Lehrabschluss für den Hund von deiner Schwester überfahren hast.
Das interessiert kein Mensch. Der Köter hat zwar auch genug gelebt.
Du weisst doch, wie traurig das sie war.
Das ist das Leben. Schweig jetzt.
Aber dein schlechte Gewissen.
Schnauze.
Ruhe jetzt! Ich störe mich an dem Podcast auf.
Die Beichte von SRF Virus, mein neuer Lieblingspodcast.
that one, for those of you who had headphones on, I'm sure you could feel some of that immersive experience. For those of you who didn't, I really do encourage you to check it out afterwards, because when we use 3D audio, and there's other technologies as you saw in that poll, but it's such an interesting way to kind of up-level your audio creative. And so it's a really, really nice way that you can give users or listeners' eyes a break. We're so overstimulated in this area, and really get super creative within the audio space. So the next practice that I want to take you through here is all around playing to the audience's interest. So this example is from Zurich University of Applied Sciences, and this was all around tapping into millennials' interest of education through this custom audio spot. And what we can see is it's a really nice way to tap into the...
Was hast du heute, Matti?
Ein Fünfer. Und du?
Ich auch. Gehst du nächstes Jahr studieren?
Ja, aber ich weiss noch nicht was.
Mathematik und Naturwissenschaften sind deine Stärken? Du möchtest Theorie und Praxis verbinden? Dann bist du bei uns richtig an der ZHAW in Wädenswil. Komm an den nächsten Infoanlass und lass dich persönlich beraten. Jetzt aufs Bannerbild klicken.
Great, so as you can probably see with that one, kind of tapping into passion points that, to the audience that you're trying to reach is obviously a great way to make sure that your message lands. So before I kind of end off my session today, I wanted to leave you with a few last tips and tricks before you hit record. So before you go into the studio or before you start actually creating some different audio spots, we have a few different kind of rules, if you will, or kind of inspiration tactics that we want to encourage you to think about. So the first one is all around how context and content matter. So as I've mentioned already, on Spotify, you can get super, super contextual. So these rich targeting segments that we have can drive 2.7 times higher awareness and 5.3 times higher intent than with basic demo targeting. And so our listeners love when an ad feels like it's tailored to them. And actually, it's one of their favorite aspects of advertising on the platform is when it feels like the ad they're listening to really fits the moment that they're in. So for example, as you can see with the image here, it's a cooking moment. So how, if you know your audience is cooking, how can you speak to them differently in this moment than you would if they were in the commute moment, for example? And we can help you identify what are the right moments to be getting your message across, and how can we make sure that the content also matches really nicely to the moment that you're speaking to them in. So the next one is all around using your audio identity. So I'm sure it goes without saying that when you hear what I'm about to play for you, everyone knows what it is. Suspense. So that obviously is McDonald's, and a lot of brands have this sonic identity that really, really instantly sparks something in listeners. And so what I encourage all of you to do working with your brands is basically to use your audio identity if you have one. So if you have this signature kind of jingle or a signature sound, go for it and use it, because we're the perfect platform to basically be tapping into this that's so iconic for your brand. And on the flip side, I would say if you don't yet have that, that's also okay, because Spotify is a great platform where you can begin to build what your brand sounds like if it's not something that's been predefined or super, super established already. So now moving on to the next one here, this is all around communicating the benefits. So when paired with listeners on the move, for example, your time-sensitive message can lead to 2 times higher FMCG return on your ad spend. So basically what this is saying is that if you're able to include exclusive offers, or if you're able to include a time-sensitive message, when you deliver this in the right moment to listeners, this means that you're going to see a great return on your investment, and your ad is actually going to have a lot more impact here. So this example is essentially saying that, okay, if you have a fast moving consumer good that you want to push out there, a great time to actually get people to think about it is when they're on the go and they could easily stop in a shop to actually pick up whatever you're wanting them to get. So we see that when this is really, when you're communicating the benefits and then pairing it with context, the results are super, super impactful. Now moving on, it looks like the screen's gotten a little blurry, and I don't know if this is just for me or if this is for everyone, but don't worry, I'll talk you through it. So basically this one is all around being clear and staying on message. So essentially you have 30 seconds to capture the listener's attention within the audio or the ad unit that you have. So basically focus on the most important point you want the listener to walk away with. So also one thing that we always think about here is that Spotify is so different than radio in the sense that it's a very, very personal listening experience. So for example, users say my Spotify, they don't say the Spotify. And what this means is that it's an intimate space for listeners. And so you should speak to them accordingly. Often on radio, it feels like you're broadcasting out potentially, whereas on Spotify, actually speaking to them in a conversational manner is much more impactful. And going back to what I said previously, a lot of our listeners stream with headphones on. It's 85%, right? So basically, if you imagine that, having headphones on, you actually think about being the listener, it's much nicer of an advertising experience if you can speak to them as if you know they're in this moment, you know it's a bit more gentle, it's a bit more intimate, and you can be really clear within those 30 seconds, keeping it conversational. So no need to scream is basically what the message is here. While also ensuring you're super clear and using the 30 seconds to your best advantage. So the next one here is all around mobile first is audio first. And essentially what that means is I think we often hear within the industry, people say mobile first, mobile first, mobile first. And we completely agree. But what we also think is that mobile first is audio first in the sense that people are using their phone, they're often also doing something else. And so, for example, when you think about exercise, and this is an example from Adidas here, but basically when people are exercising, yes, they're on their phones, but they're not actually staring at their phone in the screen. They probably have their audio on. And so audio is absolutely the best way to be speaking to them in this moment. So what we did with Adidas, which was a really interesting audio spot in the UK, was basically we did a deep dive into our data to understand what is the average BPM of a running playlist on the platform. And then what we did was we created an audio spot that used that BPM as basically the sound bed for the audio spot. So you could hear it in the background. And then we basically motivated them through the voiceover to keep going and really fit that running moment. So I'll play this for you now.
These are the streets you run. This is where you find your freedom. Handbrake off, power on, feel the boost with Adidas Ultra Boost 19. Our shoe technology has evolved to the next level with more comfort and more responsiveness. So the more you put in, the more you get back. Adidas Ultra Boost 19. Click the banner now and feel the boost.
I'll be fully transparent with you guys. I am not a runner myself, but even hearing that, I feel motivated to get out there. And so I think when we're able to be super clever with our audio, so using our data to understand what's the kind of music we should use as the sound bed, and then being really motivational within a spot can be super interesting. And think about the moments where your audience is definitely using audio as opposed to having their full screens in view. I think that's a really interesting territory to kind of look at when we're creating these new audio spots. So essentially that's it for me today. I hope that you guys have enjoyed the whole session. I am now going to hand over to Joe, who will wrap everything up and get the Q&A started in a little bit as well. So thank you, everyone.
Great. Thanks, Amanda. You mentioned about you not wanting to go for a run. I just really want to have a McDonald's breakfast now after hearing that little jingle. But yes, anyway. So yeah, thank you very much for that, Amanda. And we hope that all of you on the call found this session useful. And we hope that you are walking away from this session understanding how powerful audio can be, and that maybe you've started thinking about how your brands can activate with audio, or how you can exaggerate your existing audio activations on Spotify. But what if you don't have an audio ad? And I saw this actually pop through in one of the questions. Well, don't worry, we and Goldback here to help. If you don't have an audio ad or an audio script, really don't worry. Reach out to myself or Martin, and we can help you create a bespoke audio ad for Spotify. And everything that Amanda has just presented, we can help you fuel your campaign to create the best audio activation for your specific needs. So if you want to reach a user in a running moment, or as Amanda mentioned, the FMCG example with a strong call to action, let us know. Brief us with your KPIs of the campaign and we can create bespoke audio for you to reach the right person at the right time with the right message. Now, I'm seeing plenty of questions come through on the Q&A. So I'm going to jump into this now. So I can answer the first question, which is, can we sponsor your Spotify playlists, or do we still need to create our own? Well, we have a big, exciting announcement that recently came out, which is around Discover Weekly. Now, I'm sure any Spotify listeners on the call will recognize Discover Weekly. It's one of our biggest and best loved playlists on a global basis. We're now very, very excited that this can be sponsored by a brand in the local Swiss market. It's a relatively detailed offering, so I won't go through everything here on the call for the sake of time, but please reach out to myself and Martin after the call if you want to explore Discover Weekly. As we saw from the second poll that personalization and discovery was a real core moment of why people use Spotify. And if you as a brand can connect around that discovery moment, it's incredibly powerful for your brand message to connect with users in that open sort of discover moment. So yeah, to answer that question, please do reach out to look at Discover Weekly sponsorship. Amanda, if you don't mind, I'm going to turn to you for a question here. So you talked about some of the moments with running and call to action for an FMCG brand. So can we target those sort of audiences and target particular moments on the platform, and any hints or tips for doing that in the best way possible?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, basically Spotify has a listener's ears for all of these different moments throughout their day. So essentially starting in the morning for moments like getting ready, all the way through to the evening to sleep moments. And most of these moments are actually targetable. So what I would say is that we can actually come back to you with some of the best recommendations based off of what your brand brief is. But think about what are the different kind of moments that you would want to talk to your audience. So say, for example, you're a beauty brand. I think perhaps in the morning you want to promote a product in a getting ready moment that feels revitalizing and is basically like very energizing for the day. So I think a getting ready paired with time targeting for the morning would be amazing. Whereas speaking about a beauty brand, again, if you wanted to promote a night cream, for example, could you actually do something different for the evening? So in the wind down moment before bed, and actually speak to them in maybe a much more softer kind of audio spot, much more softer tone of voice to help them prepare for the evening. So I think one of the beauties of audio too is that you're able to create a lot of different audio spots and creative at a relatively affordable price, which is quite different to a lot of different advertising formats. And so what we really encourage you guys to think about is, how can you reach users in different moments throughout their day, promoting the same message or perhaps promoting your brand portfolio? But of course, my recommendation here would be basically to chat to us, and we can help show you all of the different moments we have available and really help educate you guys on what are the best ways to also reach your audience throughout their day.
Perfect. Great. Thank you very much. Martin, if it's okay, I'll turn to you for the next question. So we talked about how radio and Spotify work well together for reaching incremental audiences across the market, but what are the main KPIs that can transition from radio onto Spotify that brands can really exaggerate on our platform? And then also, what additional KPIs can we offer that radio maybe cannot?
Well, I think what we very often hear as a question is that people are asking us how the click-through rate is, and of course Spotify can provide a click-through rate, and I'm probably covering just another question which I saw, that whether we add a picture to every campaign. So there is a picture, there will be a click-through rate, and we can also deliver industry averages for your product. If you want to know whether you're performing well or not. But as Amanda said, if you're targeting contextually, for example, it's not necessarily the CTR which is responsible or really giving you an impression whether your campaign performs. So either you want to add a campaign where where you follow your user by tracking him and looking whether he finally buys a product on the e-commerce channel. And we also are strong believers that as radio is known as a strong platform to boost sales, that Spotify brings the same functionality with audio, with an audio spot, and delivers awareness and willingness to buy in a way which needs to be measured on the point of sales.
Great, but as Amanda and Martin have both said, whatever your KPIs of your campaign are, please reach out to us and we can help target your campaign accordingly. We've spoken a lot about audio today. Audio is our core product and really what we're trying to promote today, but our solutions are not just limited to audio. We have video, display, and then many more creative solutions, from sponsorships to detailed data API integrations that we can help you work with. So please reach out to myself and Martin for anything that you need, from audio all the way through to detailed data integrations, as we can help with that. Jumping into another question. So we saw an example from Amanda about the 3D audio, and we wanted to know, someone on the call asked if it's more expensive to create. Well, it's not more expensive in terms of a CPM basis. There is a flat CPM for all of our audio activations on the platform, but dependent on your level of 3D activation, and obviously with the Swiss market being across 3 different languages, there are some incremental costs that come for creating bespoke audio. However, as I mentioned, we with Goldback can help you produce a bespoke audio campaign for the platform. And as we have a very long-standing relationship with our audio partner here, we have preferential rates and can really help you create the best audio possible at the most affordable rates. Now, I really don't want you guys to walk away feeling that audio is an unattainable product, because it's very simple to do. We have a fantastic team with Goldback and Swiss Radio World who can help you produce it. And with all of the insights we've presented today, we can definitely help you create the right audio for your audience. Just going to jump through a couple of other questions. So can we target headphone users on the Spotify platform? Amanda, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. My advice with this would essentially be to actually go with a mobile targeting kind of activation here. And that's because, as I've mentioned quite a few times now, quite a lot of our listeners on mobile are streaming through headphones. So that's probably the best way to reach that audience. And then you're also not kind of turning your back to anyone who isn't streaming with headphones on, but the odds are very much so in your favor that the listener will be streaming through headphones. So that would certainly be our recommendation, especially as it also helps with scale, which is great too.
Yeah, and just to go back to a point that I mentioned earlier on, in terms of where our users are coming from, whilst we see a big increase in connected device listenership, mobile is still definitely the core audience driver in the Swiss market. It's very mobile heavy. It really does provide significant scale for the mobile reach. And exactly to Amanda's point, users are far more often to be connected with their headphones when listening on mobile. 85+% will be listening through their headphones. And what's really exciting for a brand is that's a one-on-one moment that no other platform is going to reach that user in. You as the brands have exclusive listenership of that particular moment. So think about the 3D audio that Amanda mentioned, or the ways in which you can really resonate with the user at that time. Another question that popped up was talking about the targeting possibility. So I can take this one. We talked in Amanda's slides around moment targeting, and we mentioned it earlier on around the different moments we can target. Of course, they're possible. So playlists and genres form a core part of our targeting solution. So we saw in the Resonate session where we saw your listening behavior, rock, pop, hip hop, these are all targetable solutions that you can use to fuel your campaigns. We then obviously have the standard demo targeting. So from Martin's slide, you saw the male, female, and age demographic splits. Of course, think about what your core audience is, and importantly, the reach points that we can give you on top of your already existing radio or digital activation. So Martin's slide talks specifically about the overall market, But if you have a core audience, let's say 18 to 34, the data that we have can provide you with exact incremental reach numbers for that specific audience versus the channels that you are already using. And then on top of this, we have some more behavioral targeting solutions. So kids, families, tech enthusiasts, runners, workout, all these types of solutions we can offer too. And they're built up of listening behavior and certain type of devices that they activate on. So again, please reach out to Martin and myself if you have a particular moment or particular core target audience that you want to reach, as I'm pretty confident that we at Spotify can help you target that. Martin, if you mind, I'll turn to you for this question that's just popped through. So talking about the ongoing cooperation with SRF, do you want to talk a little bit more about that and anything that's sort of coming up with that partnership and Spotify?
Well, I'm not going into details since SRF is just a client, and I assume that you as a client wouldn't be too happy if I shared any information with the competition. But what we really appreciate and think is also a sign in favor of Spotify when SRF is turning to Spotify as a platform to promote their podcast or their web series. That is something that addresses the right target group, and it's a client that is very loyal and coming back again and again. So that's what I can say about this partnership. The cooperation is not really cooperation; it's really a client related cooperation.
That's a very politically correct answer. So that was well dodged. Great. I'm just looking for if there's any other questions to jump in. I saw that there was a question that popped up around Ad Studio. Now, this is a self-serve tool that brands can use, which is launched in some markets and unfortunately is not yet launched in Switzerland. There will be more updates on this coming soon, but just to answer that question quite clearly, that Ad Studio is not yet available in the Swiss market. But please keep your eye out for any exciting updates that will potentially be coming shortly around that. Great, just going to look through, see if there's any other questions to ask. Martin, again, if you don't mind me turning to you, it was just talking about some minimum investment sizes on Spotify. So we have a minimum investment of 6K Swiss francs. Is that still the case? Are we looking, and why do we choose that minimum investment for the platform?
That's still the case. We think we shouldn't be lower because the impact then is just not the one we would assume to, or which would just not leverage the platform. But if you feel that this is a hurdle which will hinder you to get in touch with us, I think we always found a solution to offer opportunities and to run tests with you guys. So it's not something that should be at the forefront of your decision.
Great. I think we've got time for one more question before I wrap up. So Amanda, if you don't mind, I'll just turn to you for this one. We had a question asking about ad formats to the paid users, so to the premium side. Could you give us any rationale and reasons why we still don't do that?
Yeah, sure. So just as a bit of background in terms of Spotify's business model, essentially what we have is what we would call a freemium model. So what that means is that we have a free tier and then it funnels up into the premium tier. So what people on the premium service actually pay for is an ad-free listening experience. So essentially that's Spotify's business model and it won't be changing anytime soon. So basically what we keep trying to do is improve our free tier. So what that means is lots of engineers working to make it the best listening experience possible for those on free and make sure that the ad experience, once again, is really actually complementing their listening as opposed to interrupting it. So kind of bringing that back to the point I said around disruption versus interruption. We think that if you can get really contextual with your content, whether it's advertising content, whether it's actually editorial or playlist content, that's what our listeners want to see. That's what your audience on Spotify wants to see. And so when we can kind of up level our creative, and particularly in the audio space, to be this contextual, it actually has great results, and listeners don't mind hearing the ads because they're enjoyable. So that was a little bit of a circular response, but what I'll say is that no time in the future will we see ads on the premium tier. But what we're constantly doing is improving the free tier so that it's better for our brand partners as well as for the listeners.
Absolutely, yeah. And as I mentioned earlier, there is still significant reach and value to be had in the free tier. As I mentioned, 50% are still on the free tier. The Switzerland market is fortunate to be quite a wealthy market, but users still choose to listen to the free tier as it matches their particular listening behavior. Great, so I think we're just about up on time. So thanks guys for your help to answer all those questions. So I just wanted to summarize what we've really discussed in today's session. We hope that we've demonstrated how audio moment is now, and that Spotify can help you reach your target audience in moments that other platforms cannot reach. We hope that you have also seen how radio and Spotify can work hand in hand to give you huge incremental reach across the local market, but also compared to some strong digital platforms, how Spotify can add incremental reach points to your campaigns. We then, with Amanda's fantastic help, hope that we've given you some helpful tips and tricks to create brilliant audio ads for Spotify to help you reach the right person at the right time with the right message. All I'm left to do is to thank Martin and Amanda for your help today, and thank you all for attending. Please do reach out to myself and Martin for any questions following up from this call, and any questions we didn't answer we'll get round to. But thank you very much for your time, and I wish you all a very good day.